Smart 24, driving business.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the program. Thank you for tuning in to Smart 24 TV and for, of course, watching the #1 business channel in East Africa. My name is Anthony, and this is Financial Markets. And in this segment, we bring you the latest info in the world of financial markets. And financial markets, we mean stock markets, treasury bond markets, fixed income markets across East Africa and Africa as a continent, as well as the globe. Remember to follow us on X at Smart24 TV now. You can also watch us live on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, that is at Smart24 TV Live, for all your updates as they will be unfolding. Well, a lot has been happening. It's a new year, 2024, and a lot has already happened. And in the world of financial markets, we are already in high gear. In the United States, where we're going to be looking at what's happening on the big indices, the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones. We've seen a remarkable decline for the very first time in the last 9 weeks on these two big counters. What could be the problem, or what could be the opportunity as well for you in case you are trading on the international or on the offshore markets? We're also going to be looking at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, a couple of participants there. Nairobi Securities Exchange is the busiest and biggest stock exchange in East Africa, and definitely we watch what happens there. But first, let's look at the Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, looking at USE trading for the very first day of the week, that is Monday, the 8th of January, the stock markets at least had 5 equities or listed companies participating in the trade, ending the day with at least 3 gainers and 6 losers on the market. Now, amongst the top gainers, we had East African Breweries Limited leading the gainers with a gain of at least 1.74%, and the share price appreciating to at least 2,956.92. Now, they were followed in the second position by Stanbic Bank Uganda. Stanbic Bank Uganda appreciated at least by 1.56%, or an equivalent of 0.5 shillings, from 32 Ugandan shillings to 32.5 Ugandan shillings. Well, depending on where you are and what you want in the stock market, we would have at least people make choices depending on, first of all, what they can afford. Secondly, what their targets are or what their goals are. Now, Stanbic is one of those stocks that has been so resilient and has been so dedicated in dividend issuance. It's also one of the most profitable companies in the country and in the continent as well. Looking at Stanbic's performance in detail here on the Uganda Securities Exchange, you can at least have a look at least some of the performance indicators, and they are giving us a very good picture of the institution here on the Uganda Stock Exchange. First and foremost, the company is still one of the most traded on stocks in the past 3 months. Now, even in the beginning of the year, we're in the new year, it's still amongst the top stocks in terms of the traded on stocks. Now, the Uganda Securities Exchange has over 19 listed stocks, with Airtel being the most recent one. And out of all these, this counter that is trading at 32.5 Ugandan shillings is one of the busiest counters that is traded on the Uganda Securities Exchange. But let's have a look at other good indicators here. In terms of the traded shares today, we had 58,600 shares traded, and at least at a turnover of 1.9 million Ugandan shillings. Over about 51.2 billion shares are still outstanding for the Stanbic Bank Uganda stock. And Amongst these, we have a 1.6 trillion market capitalization. When I talk about the market capitalization in simple terms, when you multiply the current share price by the total shares outstanding for a particular stock, the amount of money you obtain is called the market capitalization. So from 32 stocks, rather from 32 shillings per stock or per share, multiplying that by 51.2 billion shares that are floated on the exchange, we have a value of 1.66 trillion that the Stanbic Bank company is representing on the exchange. Now, in other interesting news, the company has at least green figures or green arrows, at least throughout all the market performance indicators, including the 1 week performance. The 1 week performance so far is at a 1.56% appreciation, which was realized today. The 4 weekly performance or the monthly performance is at 1.21% appreciation in price. And 3 month performance has at least registered a 4.84% rate in increase. And when you look at the 6 month performance, they have at least obtained 25% in terms of value addition for their stock holders. Now, Stanbic Bank Uganda began the year with a price of 32 shillings on the 1st of January 2024 and has appreciated to 32.5%, which is at least 1.56% appreciation in the year 2024. It is ranked the 4th in terms of year-to-date performance. Of course, we've just had 8 days away from the first, so the year is quite young, but still very important to notice the fact that the very first day of trading determines a lot about the year-to-date performance of a particular stock, and that's a very important market performance indicator. Why is it so? Because first of all, you have people trading very much at the end of the year, and then at the beginning of the year, we also expect some bit of activity because the year is just beginning and people are positioning themselves in terms of trade. However, in Uganda, we have a very notorious scenario. Every January, we have very few people who are willing to put aside money to invest, given the fact that it's a time for post the festive season and the pockets are probably drained. But also it's a time for back to school when kids are almost going back to school in a few days. Also, that could hamper investment a little bit because you have most of the economy going into schooling. But still, we hope for the very best for companies that are listed on the USE. Now, in the past 3 months, the company is the second most traded on. And within this period, they have traded 112 million shares at a value of 3.6 billion. By the way, last year they made a profit of 366 billion. This 3.6 billion reminds me of their profit. And that profit has been on a growth trajectory. When you look 2 years back, Stanbic made a profit of 245 billion. And just a few years later now, we are talking about 366 billion. The company has a very good strategy and they have pushed the business to the limits, to the edge. And that means they are performing as far as the profits are concerned. And also the dividend issuance has been very good for the shareholders. For the past 3 years, there's been dividends, at least every single year. Once a year, they have issued dividends. And we expect more dividends to come even in this year for this company. So there are many ways to earn from Stanbic. We've just seen the stats for the last 1 week, the last 1 month. All that capital gain is still there, and then the dividends as well. So there's pretty much a lot of attractiveness about the stock. You're going to be able to buy into it. And I think it would be a very good counter for the short term as well, because as well, we've seen the stock price appreciate to record highs. Though I don't personally think the stock is going to appreciate further. However, if it is to appreciate, it will be by smaller margins, maybe to 33 to 34 shillings. And that kind of favors people that are trading big volumes. If you're trading big volumes, you definitely are favored by even the smallest or slightest movements because you are moving by economies of scale. And by economies of scale, I mean that the bigger you buy, the more that capital gain is going to come in. And so I think it would be a very good performance stock. When you look at, if you were looking for performance, it would also be good for dividends. All right, let's move ahead. Besides Stanbic Bank Uganda, we had Centum Investments appreciate by 0.15%. And Centum Investments is currently valued at least 201.94 Ugandan shillings. After yesterday, it appreciated by 0.3 Ugandan shillings, 0.15% appreciation in price. Currently, the company has 665 million shares outstanding at a value of 134 billion. At a value of 134 billion Ugandan shillings. This makes the company represent at least 0.8 or close to 1% of the entire equity market on the Uganda Securities Exchange. And that marks at least the company as the 14th most valuable company on the Uganda Stock Exchange. At the moment, there hasn't been any trading on Centum, but as for on the record, Centum is the only stock at least we've had trading on amongst cross-listed stocks. As I've always mentioned earlier on the show, there's a lot of inactivity on the exchanges generally in East Africa, but more so on the cross-listed stocks. Cross-listed stocks face a lot of illiquidity challenges. One of the challenges is people are not aware of these stocks, some of them. And then the other challenge could be because of low liquidity, fewer local investors are interested in cross-listed stocks. And that means they're not willing to buy into them. Another possibility could be that the people holding this stock or these shares are also not willing to sell. And that could be due to several reasons, including maybe there are institutional investors who are not willing to sell off. They are holding for the longer term. There could be challenges with dividends because, when dividends are issued from Kenya, then coming into Uganda, you have to factor in the foreign exchange rate, which is turbulent at times. And so it's quite challenging. And this is where the East African integration or the East African capital markets integration comes in handy. This is a dream I have personally that in the next 2 to 5 years, we should have a common stock exchange for Africa. Nairobi Securities Exchange is spearheading this under the leadership of the CEO, Mr. Odundo Geoffrey, and they have tried their best because without them, we can't do much. Even the cross-listed stocks I'm talking about, they are all from Kenya. And so without Kenya, we might not do much in terms of integration. However, when they decide to integrate, then they will be doing us a lot of favor because they have more stocks, they are older, they have more experience, they have more products. If we could combine that with Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and have a common exchange, that would be magic because that would be borderless trading, that would be borderless investment, and returns would also be coming in from all directions for our several investors. We could also remove barriers, both non-tariff and tariff barriers to trading on the stock exchange. Also, the bureaucracy of, having to buy stock from another country and having to factor in extra charges, that would all be history. So that would be something I would be looking up to, at least for the integration of the East African capital markets. Moving on, we have a couple of other stocks here that turned out as losers on the market. NMG came in at the bottom and with a 0.82% depreciation in price, down to 491.62 Ugandan shillings. KCB at least lost 0.77%, down to 545.71 shillings. Kenya Airways lost 0.34%, down to 92.07%. And the Jubilee Holdings Limited stock lost 0.33%, down to 4,447 shillings. The MTN Uganda stock as well came in as a bottom loser with a loss of 0.01%. That was down to 170 Ugandan shillings. That's pretty much it. MTN Uganda unfortunately lost, but still on the threshold value of 170. Let's have a look at the details here. MTN Uganda currently is at 170 Ugandan shillings per share. That's the bid and asking price. And you can have this stock coupling with a couple of other stocks. However, it is the number one most valuable stock currently in the country, with a 23.7% representation on the equity market in the Uganda Securities Exchange, and at least a 3.81 trillion market capitalization. MTN Uganda traded 72,529 shares today with a value of 12.3 million Ugandan shillings. However, currently they have 22.4 billion shares that are being floated on the exchange. MTN's performance has been quite mixed recently, with a weekly loss of 0.32%, a monthly loss of 0.09%, and yet an overall 6-month gain of 0.22% and a 1-year loss of 5.56%. The year-to-date losses are still at 0.32%. Now, MTN Uganda is the first telecom to list on the exchange and got listed on the 7th of December or 6th of December 2021. On listing, the company came in as an electronic initial public offer where they collected funds online and through their USSD codes. MTN Uganda brought a fresh fragrance on the Uganda Securities Exchange as the first, not only as the first telecom, but also as the first electronic IPO. And following this IPO was another very interesting IPO, that was Airtel Uganda, which is also the second telecom to list on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Both IPOs were undersubscribed to. However, the Airtel IPO was much more undersubscribed to, with very few retail investors coming on board. MTN Uganda currently is one of the companies that is outstanding on the exchange and resilient as well. And in terms of trade, it is the third most traded on stock, coming only behind the Stanbic stock and the Bank of Baroda stock as well. In the past 3 months, the counter has traded 8.51 million shares, valued at a total turnover of 1.46 billion Ugandan shillings over the period, with an average of at least 135,053 shares that are traded on average per trading session. Now, one of the interesting facts about MTN Uganda is the fact that it has been consistently issuing dividends for the past 5 quarters since listing. Very interesting fact. You see, the stock market really has a sense of humor, if I could say. A stock like MTN came in with a 200 shillings price and under subscription. And yes, many new investors came on the market, which is what we are always praying for and what we're always looking forward to. But immediately after hitting the main board of the exchange, the stock started to plummet and the stock value started to fall and rapidly fell to 160 shillings in March after listing in December the previous year. In March 2022, the stock fell to 160 shillings. However, there was a lot of effort and sensitization, and the markets returned at least on an average of 185, 190 shillings. And by the close of 2022, we had a stock price of at least 180 shillings. Now, 2023 also began on the same note. The stock plummeted downwards at 180, 175, and then later rose to 85, and then kept between 170 and 180 throughout the year 2023. And then finally, opening the year 2024, the stock opened at 170 shillings. Now, with all this series of events, what keeps the stock going is the fact that through transparency and through the financial statements that come in every quarter, the bank has consistently issued dividends. And the dividends that have been issued have been growing with time. For example, the very first dividend the company issued was a 4.7 shillings dividend per share. But by the close of 2023, in the final quarter, actually in the third quarter of the year 2023, we are yet to have a look at the results for the financial quarter, or the quarter that ended 2023. In the third quarter of the year 2023, they issued a dividend of 5.6 per share. And this shows you, yes, it might seem small, but it's growing. The company is growing. The company is making more profits. The company is pushing. And that's exactly where you need to put your hope. In an exchange, there must be hope. You must have hope. You must have hope that things are going to be better. And the way to give hope is increase in profits and consistent issuance of dividends. That's one way of showing that there's future in the business. And that's what most investors are looking for. They're looking for the future. They want a safe future. And you can be rest assured that if you guarantee a safe future, they will invest. And this is what we need from all companies, at least that are listed. Now, besides that, we had a couple of stocks that participated in the trade, including Airtel Uganda, MTN, Stanbic, Uganda'S, and Wumeme. Amongst these, Wumeme traded the highest number of shares at exactly 400 shillings, closing at opening prices. The company traded 24,339 shares, followed by MTN at 72,000 shares, and Stanbic Bank Uganda at 58,000, and then Airtel Uganda at 5,000, as well as Uganda'S at 1,073. Well, the stocks were spread out quite nicely, as you can see, a couple of trades here and there. So the year has begun, and I hope you are feeling it with me that the year is indeed on the way. We are in 2024. What have you done so far? Have you bought some shares already? Have you kept some money for investment in January, or you used all that in December? Big question there for you. Regarding the performance of the indices, which are the benchmark, the performance indicators as well for our stocks here, we have the benchmark index, the USE All Share Index, which inched up by 1.78 points up to a closing point of about 889. Now, this represents a weekly gain of 1.92% and a 4-week loss of 0.58%, and an overall year-to-date gain of 1.92%. The overall USE Local Company Index also increased by 0.22%, giving hope to investors that the markets are quite healthy for the start of 2024. Let's have a look at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, ladies and gentlemen, the busiest and the most attractive market in East Africa. I don't know if it still is, but yes, it's the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Now, the Nairobi Securities Exchange had, out of the 66 listings, over 47 participants in the market. And the day ended with 19 gainers and 16 losers. Consequent of these good performers, the top gainers, the all-share index inched upwards and moved to a positive direction. The data shows, however, a 58% decline in the volume and a 66% decline in the turnover, but a 20% improvement in the number of deals. You see, there's always a plus. The volumes decreased, the volumes decreased, the turnover decreased, but the deals went up. That's good. That's good. Means more participants in the market. Now, long-con publishers led the gainers, at least finally in the year 2024, by at least 9.22% share price appreciation, closing off at 2.37 Kenyan shillings per share, whereas Jubilee Holdings appreciated by 8.11%. And Elam Income Fahari Real Estate Investment Trust, at least also appreciated by 7.5%. The losers side had a couple of stocks, including Uganda'S, which came in last with an end of day depreciation of close to 8%. And it was followed by Kakuzi with a loss of 6.49%, and Diamond Trust Bank Kenya with a loss of 3.44%. Now, KCB recorded the highest volume at a stance of 883,800 shares, which is something rare from Nairobi. We are used to 2 million shares, at least having the top counter trading at 2 million, 3 million sometimes, 1 million on a bad day now. But now we're looking at 800,000 shares. Something in for Nairobi Securities Exchange. Cooperative Bank came in as well with 400,000. Ken General Group, at least with 800 as well. and Kenya Power with 321,000. The NSE 20, the NSE 25, as well as the NSE 10, other indices showed a quite good performance as well, in showing at least a very good and positive picture of the Kenyan Stock Exchange. Well, that's it from the East African stock exchanges. And definitely this year we are hoping and we are still praying for a very good year in the stock market. But of course, things can happen and do happen, but we remain very, very hopeful that things will work in the favor of at least most of you who have been able to invest. Now, let's have a look at the US markets here on the national platform for the international trading markets. Now, when you look at some of the news coming in from the international world, the Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft that had their window blown off mid-flight, that is belonging to Alaska Airlines, has caused the grounding of the over 170 737 MAX planes across America and across the world. This has hampered Boeing's performance for the stock market and has pulled down a couple of indices as well. Now, the stocks ended mixed today on Monday afternoon, with the Dow pulling lower as the Boeing counter sold off and uncertainty about the prospects of the interest rate cuts continued to weigh on the markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average sank around 0.2% or about 80 basis points, and the S&P 500 rose close up to at least 0.6%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq was also up by 1.3%, and after all, the three major stocks broke a 9-week winning streak on Friday. Dow Components, Boeing's shares tumbled as much as 9% as the U.S. authorities grounded the 737 MAX 9 jets in the wake of the mid-air fuselage blow-up. The incident hit other stocks, with shares in the MAX 9's operators like Alaska Airlines and United Airlines, which operate the jet, losing ground. The fuselage maker as well, Spirit Aero Systems, shares sank more than 7%. Yeah, very interesting facts. One thing happens to one company and the effects are felt throughout all the other stretches of the market, including the indices, including other makers of the other parts of the aircraft. And that's the whole thing keeps on rolling. It's sort of a ripple effect. That's what makes the stock markets very, very volatile and delicate. You have one thing happening in the market and it has the whole market going crazy. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Overall, investors are trading at least carefully after stocks took a bruising first days of the 2024, thanks to the dwindling expectations for an early rate cut by the Federal Reserve Bank. Strong labor market data, including a hotter than expected December jobs report, have intensified the debate around the path of Fed policy. Fed has been raising the interest rates for the past 2 years on the United States market. Will we see the same? Unlikely, very unlikely. We are most likely to see a cut back on the interest rates in the United States and in the global interest rates, generally speaking. As of course, inflation has been easing all the way downwards, and it's been cutting across as well, not only in the United States, but also in Uganda, in Kenya, and the East African region, and the continent of Africa as well. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for sparing time. We're out of time, but thank you so much for watching Financial Markets. Remember to follow me on Twitter or X at Anthony Sabali, and follow Smart24 TV at Smart24 TV now. My name is Anthony. Till next time, bye for now. Good night.